Hey guys, Don Rice here, and working on the second elevator for the Corsair. And first one's essentially ready for color paint, and I've been putting off doing the second one because it's just kind of a slog doing these pinked tapes. But I went ahead and got all the pinking tapes onto the second elevator, and I thought I would try and show you how I did the trailing edge. And so I'm getting set up for that, and we're going to do this trailing edge piece, top and bottom and the curve, all with one piece of this. So this is 8/10 of an inch wide, 1/5 scale Warbird pinking tapes from pinkit.com. So this is the stuff I use for most of the other stuff. It's the 4/10 wide, and so that goes on top of each of these battens. It's the thing that's used here to do the reinforcing outlines that are on the real one. I've got it on the edge here, along the trailing edge of these shrouds here, over the trim tabs. Anyway, all that's done. Other things we need. So we're going to have a pair of tweezers. These are round nosed tweezers, so I don't poke holes in things. We've also got a brand new razor blade, brand new number 11 scalpel, and two different types of monocoat irons. So I've got the regular monocoat iron set just below 3, and then the trim tool, which is set on high. And we'll get started in a second. Okay, so it's fairly easy to start off anyway. So I'm going to take the elevator and basically guesstimate where the middle of this piece of the pinking tape is. So it's 8/10 of an inch wide. I want the point that is 4/10 of an inch wide to be put right down the trailing edge, right on the edge. Alright, that's the only part that I'm going to seal initially. So I'll just tack it right there. I'll move down a couple of inches. Tack it. Move down a couple of inches. Tack it. There we go. Alright, so and then I'll connect the dots, if you will. Alright. I've got to get around the corner. So we'll hold that in place. That didn't stick. It's okay. As we go around this corner, the heat from the iron is actually already kind of pre-shrinking the Solartex around this corner. So, you know, you think, alright, well, it's one thing to go down a straight edge like this and then wrap it and seal both sides. No big deal. But we're going to go around this, which is roughly an 8-inch diameter curve, and we're going to be shrinking it a little bit at a time, but taking out that excess material in the form of shrinkage, and we'll be stretching it all the while as well, in order to get it to lay down with as few wrinkles as possible. But before we actually get to the corner, because that is the most difficult part, I like to kind of work on the easy parts first, because A, it kind of reacquaints me with my irons, and so I'll kind of go at it at an angle here. You can see that's maybe like a 45-degree angle, and just get it nicely sealed. Same on the back side. I'm rubbing away from the sealed part so that it kind of draws it tight as I come down. So some added difficulty here is that as it goes down, it's going to be going over the pre-existing battens and pinking tape. So before I get too far along here, I want to go ahead and take the trim tool, and I'm going to go up to each one of these, and I want to seal it down in that corner. Just like that. I'll seal it to the top of the batten. I'll seal it in that corner right there. Just like that. I'll go to the next one. Because ultimately, this seal right here down in this corner of each of these battens, you want to get that, you want that seal to be as good as you can get it. You want it to be perfect, because that seal is what keeps wind from blowing underneath this lip and potentially pulling your pinking tape off of the elevator. That would be bad. Now, it's not going to be perfect. You know, we strive for perfection, but we won't really know where we've left tiny little entrances for air to get in until we shoot some primer on it and we can see the holes a little more clearly, because they're going to be very, very small holes. And then I just seal them up with a little bit of RC56 or Formula 560, whatever. It's canopy glue, and so I'll put a couple of drops down inside those holes if there are any. On the first elevator, I had 2 of these little edges on the battens, 2 of them that didn't have. I'm going to stop here on this one because the curve is already started, and you can see how things are starting to get all crinkly here. I don't want to seal that batten because it's already on the curve, and that's going to make things a little more difficult. So I'm going to continue to go around here, sealing each of these battens on this side and on this side, and then I'll bring you back as we start getting serious about this corner. Alright, so I don't know if you can, well, you should be able to see this, but the darker area right here has been sealed. that darkness is the heat-activated glue of the Solartex that has glued itself to the primer. And what I wanted to show you is that for these pinks, these tiny little little triangles on the edge here, what we want to do is we want to seal them by moving away from them so that we don't fold them up and have them glue down on top of each other, but we want to get a nice dark, you can see the glue has been activated, and you want to get a good seal of each of those little triangles down to the surface. Piece of cake. For the edges, I know that generally speaking, when you do covering, you want to kind of cut the edges and have some overlap so that you get a good seal. But in this area goes these trim tabs, and I've made the gaps very, very shallow. So I'm essentially, it's a sharp razor blade. I'm going to be trying to cut these off flush, right on. I don't want to have any overhang of this material because it could potentially interfere with the movement of, in this case, that's the boost tab, and that does move, and I don't want any interference. So I'll cut it off flush, and I'll use the iron just to make sure that the edge is sealed properly. Alright, so we can see even though this area looks light, and it is, obviously it's lighter than these gray areas, but it is sealed down. The reason it's light is because the primer has been sanded through on that area. But I've got a good seal all the way down, and now we're getting into this corner region where things are about to get interesting. So, okay, here we go. And I'll be doing almost all the work here is going to be done with this trim tool, but as I apply heat and I'm sealing just past the apex of this edge, the heat of the tip here is having an effect on the loose pinking that's out here, and it's essentially kind of shrinking it up a little bit as I go around, and as I seal closer and closer to the flat surface, I get more and more kind of crinkling, and that's okay. It's that material is slowly kind of being shrunk. I'll turn over and do the same thing on the other side. move the iron fairly slowly here because I want that heat to be shrinking some of that excess material. Alright, so you can see how we have essentially a lot of scalloping here. That's kind of the way this stuff shrinks up. We get this kind of scalloping going on, and this is where things start to get fun. Alright, so I'm going to use the tweezers, and I'm just going to grab a random section here, and I'm going to try, and I'm pulling now on the Solartex as I seal it just in this one little area, and I'm not sealing all the way out to the triangular pinked part, I'm just pulling straight out. I'll go down, like in this case, about 1/2 inch, and kind of run the iron over this excess stuff, which helps to shrink it up again. I'm pulling and stretching and shrinking, but I'm not sealing it down yet. I'm trying to get it to want to be a curved piece of Solartex. So it's almost flat now. And I'm not sealing it. The only place I sealed was right here. I'm just kind of pulling and shrinking, trying to get some of those scalloped, uneven curves shrunk out of this stuff. Just like that. Alright, we'll come back in and I'll seal this down now. It's kind of a feel thing. I want to seal it with using up as much of the slack as I can, kind of pulling and cajoling, and I've got a little bit of a wrinkle that wants to happen right here, and a little tiny wrinkle like this, you know, and there's little tiny wrinkles here. I mean, they're very, very small. That's okay. Once the paint goes on, it's going to look very realistic, because essentially this is how the real ones were done as well, with one piece of material, linen or silk or whatever, and they had to wrap it around and try and get it to lay flat as well. Because I'm going to end up chopping off this excess at the leading edge here. In fact, I'll just do that now. I can actually try and pull some of the excess material to shrink in that direction. So with the tweezers, I'm pulling forward in that direction as I try and shrink this stuff, and so the heat allows the stuff to stretch in that direction. Hey, even though, you know, these little tiny wrinkles that you see here, even though that's normal, and will be virtually invisible when it's all said and done, and even if you look really close and you can see them and that they are there, and even though they'll look real and they'll look scale, I nonetheless want to get rid of as many of them as I can. So things will get a little bit more complicated here as we get closer to the battens, because the battens add more directional changes to the equation. So I'm going to keep shrinking without sealing until I get to right about here. Things are about as shrunk as they're going to get, and I'm going to go ahead and seal that down inside that corner right there. Alright, now we'll see if we can get the rest of this to seal down without having too much in the way of a wrinkle. There we go. You can see that one and that one right here and right here. Those are probably the two worst ones, and they aren't bad at all. We'll shoot some primer on here and you can see them a little more clearly once primer goes on, but when you sand with some like 400, it'll knock those down a little bit and they'll become even more invisible. Same thing on the other side here. I'm not sealing it down to the surface yet. I'm just kind of pulling, shrinking, stretching. Kind of use the tweezers and the iron together. The heat from the iron makes the material pliable. Yeah, normally heat will make it shrink, but with the tweezers I'm pulling, so it also allows the stuff to stretch. And as mentioned before, you want to make sure you get a good seal on all those little tiny triangles so the air can't get under them. And so that it looks good when you're all done. Seal it down around the back edge of the batten, just like that. Okay, that's how we do that. Alright, so just to finish up, we'll take care of this little bit here at the leading edge. This is the leading edge of the elevator here, and I want a little bit of fold over because there's another piece of pinking tape that has to run across here to seal this piece and this piece and this piece, and adds some reinforcement to the leading edge here. So I'll go right to the edge of the fiberglass tip there, and I'll just cut that like that, and I'm going to leave maybe, I don't know, not much to wrap around here. Like that. Same thing with the bottom side. And then I'll just seal this around the corner like that. And the top side will pull down. Stuff all just kind of melts together. Just like that. Alright, so take a close look at the way that's sealed up. Nice. And we can see as we look at all the way around the edge of this pinking, it's all sealed. We got all those little triangles sealed. You know, some very, very tiny little folds and wrinkles and whatnot here and there, but they're very minor, and they won't even be noticeable when the painting is done. When all is said and done, you know, when you prime on this and do a little bit of sanding, it takes out the very, very minor imperfections, and it'll look fantastic. At least that's the hope. Okay, that's how we pink a long corner. Good fun. Later.